The Stingy Baker. Once upon a time, there was a baker who had a shop in a small town in America. This baker was not a very kind man. He never gave his customers more bread than was necessary for their money and never smiled. But he was a very good baker. His bread was the softest you could imagine. Sometimes, customers would pay for his bread and start eating it right there in the shop. His cakes were really delicious. People came to his shop from all over the town. As they walked down the street, they would smell the wonderful scent of the baker's bread and his delicious cakes and would go straight into his shop. But not everyone went in. Some people just stood outside the shop, smelling and looking through the windows. The baker didn't like that.
They're filling their stomachs with the smell of my bread. I'm giving them a free lunch, and I get nothing for my hard work,
he said to himself.
Maybe there's a way to put these delicious smells into bottles. Then I can sell them, just like I sell my bread.
One winter morning, very early, the baker was in his shop making bread. He wasn't happily singing as he worked. He was complaining to himself about having to wake up early, about the cold weather, and about anything that came to mind. In the midst of it all, he looked up and saw someone looking through the window. It was a young man wearing an old coat. He was looking at the baker's bread and was hungry. He was smelling the fresh bread and smiling. When the baker saw him, he became very angry.
That thief outside my shop has his stomach full with the smell of my bread. It's a free breakfast. I get nothing for my hard work while he steals my smells,
thought the baker. The man didn't move. He just stood there, closed his eyes, and smelled the fresh bread happily. The baker was really angry now. He crossed the shop, opened the door, and shouted to the man.
Pay me! Pay me for what?
Asked the young man, very surprised.
For the smells you stole,
replied the baker.
But I didn't steal anything. I'm just smelling the air. The air is free,
said the hungry young man.
It's not free when it's filled with the smells from my shop,
replied the baker.
Pay me now or I'll call the police.
When the young man didn't pay, the baker grabbed him by the coat and pulled him through the snow to the judge's house. He knocked on the door. After a long time, the judge opened the door in his nightclothes. He looked at the baker and the hungry young man standing outside on the street. It was 6 o'clock in the morning. What could be so important so early in the day?
This man is a thief. He stole the smells from my shop,
said the baker. The judge was surprised, but all he said was, Come in and tell me your story. But first, give me time to dress. He went back inside the house. After a few minutes, he returned and ushered them inside. They all sat together around a large table. All right, tell me everything, baker, you start, said the judge. He listened quietly. First, the baker told about the hungry man who stole all his smells. The judge continued listening. Then, the young man told that the air was free and that anyone could have as much as they wanted. When they finished telling their stories, the judge remained silent for a few minutes. The baker began to recount again how the other man took all his smells without paying. Stop, be quiet. I've decided what we'll do, said the judge. Young man, do you have any money? The young man put his hand in his pocket and took out some coins. He showed them to the judge and said,
"Sir, this is all the money I have in the world."
"Give those coins to me," said the judge. The young man placed them in the judge's hand. "I've listened carefully to both stories," began the judge. "It's true that the smells were coming out of the baker's shop, and these smells belong to the baker. And it's also true that this young man took these smells without paying for them. So I say the young man has to pay the baker for the smells he took." The baker smiled, perhaps for the first time in his life. He immediately reached out for the money, but the judge didn't give it to him. "Baker, listen and listen carefully," he said. He shook the coins in his hands, and they jingled together. "This can pay for the smells," he told the baker.
"Give me my coins, sir,"
said the baker, no longer smiling. "No," said the judge. "I've decided that the sound of money is the best way to pay for the smell of the bread." With that, he returned the coins to the poor young man and sent him away. As the young man walked back home, the coins weighed in his hand, but his heart was light. He reflected on the judge's wisdom and the lesson he learned on that cold winter morning. Comment below what you thought of the story.